We are all familiar, of course, with Paul Revere's ride, but here's a little-known bit of revolutionary history. Revere's historic journey passed by a stark and shocking sight.
At the time, it was just a footnote on a map, but what it reveals about Black Americans and colonial history is eye-opening. Just a note that this story and the historic images may be difficult for some to watch.
In 2024, as part of the Boston Public Art Triennial, artist Ife Franklin led a procession of healing and remembrance.
The resurrection of Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe is a piece for 3 individuals who were enslaved here in Charlestown in the 1700s.
To understand the reason for this gathering, the meaning of this structure, and how it relates to one of the most revered stories of the American Revolution, we must start a conversation about the long history of slavery right here in Massachusetts.
So we know that the first enslaved people are brought over to Massachusetts on the slave ship the Desire in 1638.
Dr. Kiera Singleton is the executive director here at the Royal House and Slave Quarters in Medford.
The royal family acquires the plantation in 1732, and slavery is happening in this space until Isaac Royal Jr. flees to Nova Scotia at the start of the Battle of Lexington and Concord.
The royal family fled not because they were enslavers in a colony exploding with dreams of independence, but because they were British loyalists. Slavery in Massachusetts survived the American Revolution.
The standard answer is that it's legal in Massachusetts until 1783, but actually it still exists in other forms long after that.
Excavations on site provide a glimpse into what life may have been like for the men, women, and children enslaved here.
Some of my favorite artifacts are the tobacco clay smoking pipes, and all of these items were found in the gardens directly in front of the slave quarters. And which is really important about that is that anyone who was in the big house wouldn't have been able to see what enslaved people were doing.
For visitors, the Royal House and Slave Quarters offer a window into important untold stories from America's past. This site receives funding from sources including the nonprofit Mass Humanities.
Mass Humanities is the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. So we were founded in 1974, and we support arts, culture, humanities projects throughout the Commonwealth.
One of its current initiatives is called Promises of the Revolution.
This year, with the nation celebrating the 250th of the Declaration of Independence, we wanted to support projects that explored the American Revolution and its aftermath. What we really believe and value is this idea that sometimes sitting with the past can be uncomfortable, but that feeling is what tells you you're looking into something important.
Take, for example, the historic ride of Paul Revere, a huge point of local history and pride. Years later, when Revere wrote a letter recounting the night in detail, he spoke of an encounter with British officers at a location marked today with this statue and plaque. At the time, Revere described the place as nearly opposite where Mark was hung in chains. This one line provides a different picture of that night and begs the question, who's Mark?
So Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe were 3 people who were enslaved by a former shipping captain named John Codman in Charlestown. Not only is John Codman just abusive, to all enslaved people on the plantation, but in particular, it's alluded that Phoebe would have been experiencing sexual violence from John Codman.
In 1755, Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe conspired to kill Codman by poisoning. The ensuing trial and conviction were huge news in the colony. Considered a lesser conspirator, Phoebe is basically deported. Mark and Phyllis, however, were subjected to fates worse than death.
Phyllis is actually burned at the stake. Mark is hung and gibbeted.
Gibbeting was a British practice, often reserved for pirates, of hanging a deceased body on display as a warning. It was very uncommon in the colonies.
It's cruel and unusual because Black people are not supposed to murder their enslavers.
When you consider Mark's body had been hanging for 20 years when Paul Revere referenced it in 1775, that message becomes even more clear.
Mark's death becomes not only a warning to other enslaved people about fighting back, but then it also becomes so normalized that his body is used as a way to understand space and directions. And that, to me, is one of the things that we should all be uncomfortable about.
We return to 2024, where suddenly this piece by artist Ife Franklin, a cocoon of healing in the style of Mark's infamous Gibbet, holds the hope of some resolution.
Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe never felt safe. I want them to feel safe here. It was absolute trauma, and I feel like my work is the opposite of that. Rest, ancestors, rest.
And the murder of slave owner Captain John Codman had really been escalating for years.
But not a crime of passion, right?
Right.
Because what happens is, prior to the murder, Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe actually tried to burn down a part of his workshop in the hopes that he would sell them. Now, Mark was a literate man. He read the Bible, and he chose poison as the weapon of choice, if you will, because he felt that it would not be a sin because they didn't lay hands on the victim and no blood was shed. And that's how that evolution happened.